Passover. Anybody know the deeper history of the Passover, the origin perhaps of the Passover?
So comes out of Egypt.
Speak on.
Well, it was when Moses was told to go to Egypt and have this intense conversation with Pharaoh about letting God's people be released from bondage.
Go straight to the go. Do me a favor. Go
Okay, okay,
straight to the
read down to the final where
yeah.
where
Go straight to the Passover piece. In terms of what
where actually
happened in that process.
killing the sons of Egypt in that Passover would allow that angel to pass over the door. If they put the blood over the top of the door, the Hebrews, and it allowed that death to pass over them. It was symbolic of death, and it would not cause that death to come to the Hebrews. That blood symbol would cause that to not happen to them. That was the Passover. It passed over their doors. The death passed them over.
Good. There we go. There we go. I just gotta get you go narrow. Just do a straight sausage sandwich instead of gumbo. Go straight to it. so, so yeah. So they were told to take that blood, strike the door. It would be an indication to death that you don't need to stop here. It was a covering. That was the initial, and then that then was instituted as a regular practice throughout the movement of Israel, and it was practiced all the way until Christ's arrival. And as Miss Pam says, it was symbolic or a foreshadowing, as the language that is used, to show what would ultimately happen, that death would cease to have the power over us as had been the case since the garden. So now, remember, gardens, you got two of them. Now we're back in a garden, and there is preparation by the ultimate sacrificial lamb, the Lamb of God, whose blood would be used to cover all who believe and prevent death from ever having impact and effect on us ever again. Whew! Now that's very important to note that. So now back in the garden, this time praying that we get this right. That we get this right. That first time in the garden, Adam couldn't get it right. This time, Jesus, the last Adam, there will be no more because there will be no need for any more, is praying, Father, let me get this right. There we go. We're at the doorstep. Now, what y'all want to talk about? Now we're right there in the text. We got some really good backgrounding, and I'm hoping a little bit more clarity and understanding about what's going on with this particular event, Passover. A lot of preparation going on. So Luke 22:20, 39:44. Mr. Miles already given it to you. What you got to say about this particular instance where we see Jesus praying and we get a chance to hear that prayer here in the text? I'm listening. Good morning, beautiful people. Good morning, Miss Rose. Good morning, Jennifer, Anita G. Good to see you. Miss Linda Thomas. I'm going to go.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bishop. I just wanted to say that it's Micheline. I just wanted to say that I think again here in this prayer we see Jesus being totally vulnerable and open and transparent. And he says to God, if it be your will that this cup can pass, he's saying, can this moment's preordained situation that I'm supposed to bear all the sin the way I'm supposed to die? I know what I was sent here for, but if it's any way that this can not happen, and we had those moments where we'd be like, can I not go through this moment, please?
Yeah.
But then he also acknowledges at the end of the day, your will, not my will, be done. But again, I just appreciate the pure openness and vulnerability. And it talks about how blood was dripping from him. Like there was, I mean, if we ever wondered if Jesus experienced any of the emotions, the pain, the agony, the distraught, any of those things that we experience, if you ever wonder, like, does he know what I feel? I say, go here
Yes.
and you'll have clarity. So,
Yeah. Good. Yeah. We're peeking through the window of some serious moments. Thank you, Doctor. Y'all come on. If I'm talking sometimes, I'm just rambling. If you kick in and want to start dealing with it, I'm good. So who's next? Who's next?
It's, to me, it stuck out was that, there were other times when the crowd wanted to grab him, but he said the time wasn't right. And how he knew this was the right time because when he went, from what I was reading, I did some more research, and that week he was going to Mount of Olives all the time, right? And so Judas knew he was going to be there, and he knew that Judas knew, and he knew that Judas was going to betray him. Yet he still went there to pray at night, so Judas would know exactly where to lead the Pharisees or whoever they were, Sadducees, all of them, to capture him. So he wasn't trying to avoid them this time or remove himself from them. He knew that they knew that that's where they would be able to find him.
Yeah, there was clear surrender. He said, "You don't take my life, I give it." Yeah. So he reached that moment where he understood it was that time to do the thing, to get it done. All right. Who else? I see Brooks is in here with Myers.
Yeah, Bishop, I have a question because I always wondered why he told the disciples that followed him at this particular time, pray that you may not enter the temptation. Why at that very moment was that what he decided to do? I never really understood that. I want to get some insights.
Yeah. Well,
I,
who's talking?
no, I was gonna try and answer, but go ahead. I'm sure you have the answer. I was gonna try it.
Oh, come on. Let's see what you got to say.
Well, he knew that he was going to die, so he was going to be leaving them, right? And he knew the temptation, whether or not. So when they were going to see their Messiah die, all right, who they said was Messiah. So the temptation of doubt, I guess, like, wow, this guy, he was the Messiah, but we're watching him get killed on the cross. Did he deceive us? Or, what's this about? Because they didn't know that he was going to rise again. And so they would be tempted to either say, wow, we've been hoodwinked. This guy, well, they wouldn't have used those words in those terms because they didn't have a hood, but maybe camel wink. I don't know, whatever.
Okay, Pam, really?
So anyway, the temptation to
jump off.
reject him, the temptation to reject him, and to deny him, and to question whether or not he truly was the Messiah. And so that was going to be, Jesus was praying for them to be strengthened to stand their ground, so to speak, in terms of what they believed and who they believed him to be.
Yeah. Did somebody have that experience?
Peter? I had the exact
Thank you.
opposite thought. I thought that when I read it, it was to me it came across as, okay, don't be tempted to fall back into this world of fleshly behavior because they're coming at me, and I don't want you all to go worldly and say, hey, no, you can't have him. You got to come through me first. So we're gonna throw down right here and now. So
you thought your
the temptation
is the
yeah,
temptation is to fight.
Yes, and but before even that, I wasn't even going to go here. But before we got to this point. You know, it dawned on me that, hey, he's going to the Mount of Olives, and what is the significance of them specifying that he's going to the Mount of Olives? And so, in my research, I found that that's where Ezekiel had prophesied that the vision of him coming out of the temple and going to the Mount of Olives, and the Mount of Olives also represented a place where David ran to, I guess, to seek peace and to seek security. And that may not be the right word from Absalom at that time and during that time. And so it was this place that you go to seek solace. You go to, I guess, to pray, but to also find comfort and peace at that place because he knew the turmoil that was about to ensue.
So that's a bit of history about that particular Mount of Olives. All right. So, but back to the question Brad posed, and your response is you're thinking that perhaps their being tempted to fight would be the issue, and then of course tomorrow blurted it out that it was Peter who actually fell for that. Anybody else have anything that you want to add?
I would like to real quick because I thought of that too. That
Okay.
it was significant that he told them, "Hey, y'all stay right here and pray that you don't fall into temptation." So, what is the temptation? I don't know. I'm looking at what got him to this point. Was it the temptation of Judas? What he did? Was he tempted by greed and money and deception? That temptation. That's what I'm thinking. You said, "Hey, you need to pray about these things because what you're about to experience and see is going to cause you to want to turn and go the opposite way. So pray that these things don't come upon you." It's kind of my thought.
So do you remember Peter's words to Jesus and Jesus rebuking Satan for speaking? What was going on in that instance? You remember that one? Okay, so I
Yeah,
won't make
he was trying to deny Jesus from completing what he came there to do.
he was
Right?
trying to prevent him. He rebuked Jesus
To,
for moving forward to give his life.
yes.
And he said, "No, we're not going to do that." And Jesus rebuked him, right? Do you think Jesus was possibly tempted because of those words? You think Jesus was possibly tempted to consider what he had said and back off?
Absolutely, because he was even talking to God about it. And he said, "If there's another way to do this."
Mm,
Mhm. All right.
okay. So earlier, go ahead, Ken. Come on, Ken.
Perhaps it was the human experience Jesus was having simultaneously with the spiritual experience, which is it when he said, "Nevertheless, thy will be done." The human experience of the doubt, the resistance, to want to reject it,
The fear.
the fear of it,
Yeah.
and that's the human side of it. But then the spiritual side was to allow and to surrender to what is expected of him, to give
Okay.
his life in exchange for the life of humanity.
Okay. We walked a distance on this one, but I would say that both of those experiences were human experiences. One was experience of fear and concern for safety and comfort. The other experience was also human, and it was called obedience and submission. That's both of those are human experiences. It's the necessary experience for all of us to have to do the thing, right? Okay, so I think I'm going to settle with I think it was maybe Pam's insertion, maybe somebody else. I'm sorry, with Brad's question. I think this temptation has to do with staying with truth and staying with what they've witnessed and not being tempted to testify of anything less, but to continue to share that gospel truth that they now possess and will possess even more after this resurrection power. So he said, "Let's pray. It's time to pray. We got a job to do. Jesus is facing a significant challenge and undertaking, and he decided, hey, I'm going forward with this. Now you too will have to grab your cross at some point in time and follow. So you need to learn that you're going to need to pray to be able to endure the temptation to walk away, to deny, to not complete the task that's at hand. All right. Uh, there you go. He's praying. There's another thing that I kind of noticed in this. If we hit that text, y'all know we ain't been as tight on it as we have been, but that's okay. We've had some great discussion, and we knew this week was going to be about observation. But verse 41, and he was withdrawn from them about a stone's throw. And then what did he do? Because we observed a way that he prayed the other day, and here's a different way. Because the other day, what did he do? He looked up. Now
He
this time,
kneeled.
he knelt
That
down this
that
time.
was that was also significant because usually in those days they prayed, they did everything standing,
Mm,
and he warned them about the need and the importance for them to pray. It
that's
was like a warning kind of.
yeah. And then you think about the fact that he's only a stone's throw away, which meant he obviously wanted them to hear what he was saying because he didn't go private with it. He just stepped away. I think also considering that, and these are possibilities, more conjunction than anything else, but might have been that he wanted to provoke them in some way to pray and to consider. But he also at the same time did not push or press. He mentioned it, he demonstrated it at a distance. So now you get a chance to see how I'm doing this and maybe follow suit. Brad, you had your mic open. You can go.
Yeah, I was just going to say that kneeling is a gesture of obedience. So, I mean, I'm just reading this now that, or
Okay.
seeing this, that he was, in my mind, he was saying that, oh, I'm obedient to whatever the Lord wants,
Hmm.
whatever God wants. But I'm still, Father, if we can remove this cup from me, do so, but I'm still going to be obedient regardless.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing now.
I got
And
another. I got another.
And kneeling, when you are kneeling, you are really vulnerable, right?
Hey
You are
Pam.
like if you're standing,
Hey Pam.
you are in preparation for attack.
I don't think Pam's speakers work.
I said, can you hear me now?
Oh, we can hear you. You just can't hear us because you started talking and we be talking already.
Oh, ha ha.
No, it's kind of funny though, Pam, because you be gone. But but uh but go ahead, Pam, and then Brooks, you can follow.
No, I said it already. I just said when you're kneeling, you in a position of vulnerability also, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're yeah, you're very vulnerable, and it is complete surrender. But if like we were saying, they usually stood, and so if you're standing, you're more in a position to defend yourself. You're more defenseless when you're on your knees.
Okay, so a vulnerable posture. Brooks, thank you, Pam.
No, I was just really just so commenting on the and I think it might have been Brad who said this or somebody else said it. I didn't go as deep as everybody else has been going. I kind of kept
Yeah,
it more so at the contextual aspect of
you're
it.
thinking out loud. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying I didn't even think that out loud that deep like about it. I was just saying look, just me personally. Um and not to say anybody did anything wrong. I'm just saying that. But like where my mind stayed on it is just the aspect of they were exhausted, and he was telling them not to fall into temptation. So I know the another variation of this story, like in Mark or I want and one of the other gospels, um, he came back to them like two or three times, and
Yeah,
they were still sleeping.
yeah. Go ahead.
They were still sleeping in regards to that situation. And so to me, I feel like he was telling them not to go to sleep so that you can hear me pray, so that you can witness some of the stuff that's going on as I pray.
Mhm.
And even though you're exhausted, try not to fall into the temptation of going to sleep, or to, I believe, I don't know who said this, but to the temptation of falling or yielding to your flesh in this moment, because
Yeah,
you're gonna miss out on something.
yeah.
So, like, that's really what my mind was staying there with it, because every time he came back in this other variation of the story,
They
he was
kept
super.
sleeping.
He kept coming back, and he was. It's almost like, I don't want to say he did cuss or he wanted to cuss, but he was upset to that point. Like, man, y'all still sleeping out here? I done told you not to go to sleep,
Perhaps just
and you,
frustrated. Just
yeah,
frustrated.
just super frustrated, like very frustrated with them, because I brought you up here for this purpose, and you missing out on this opportunity
Yeah.
to experience and see what's going on right now.
Preacher preach
So,
every Sunday. Then he worked Monday through Friday and talks about the Bible. And then people can have all that opportunity and still miss some things. And then it's like you, every now and then, you get a little tight about that, but then you just loosen up and get back to the program. Check this out, real. Let me just throw this seed out there for you. Um, Father, if it's your will, take this cup. Now, we
hmm
all know that he knows. He knows why he came, and he knew what was going to happen. But can we go back a bit? And I'm sorry to do this to you all, but we need to, just for the exercise of thinking about what we're thinking about, so this stuff is not just kind of hanging out there on its own. But there was a foreshadowing of this very act. Back a little bit with a brother named Abraham. And Abraham was put in a position to where he would sacrifice his son, who was very precious to him. Very precious. Why? The boy born out of season should not even have been able to be there. He cherished this boy, loved this boy. And then he's given the instruction to give him up. And so he just walks out of obedience, takes the young lad, as one text says, gathers the sacrifice and heads up to worship, sacrificing his son. And something happened. The angel stopped him and told him, look, here's a sacrifice over here. Now, could it have been that Jesus was reflecting on that moment and thought maybe, just maybe, there was another way that this was going to unfold? That's a bomb right there for you. Work that around in your noodles. I'm listening. Yeah, I know. Good morning, beautiful people. It's Thursday.
Well, since you brought that up,
Good
I'm
morning.
gonna look at it and go like, okay, if
I
that's,
got you next, Anita. Come on, Deke.
can you hear me? Yeah, if that's a possibility, what you just brought up with Abraham, and we know that, yeah, there was, the angel stopped him and said, no, we're not gonna get it done this way. So if Jesus was praying and thinking, well, is this a possibility? Well, then the conclusion is, well, you are that possibility. So there is no other way. So then,
Well,
if that's the case, and if we're talking about, if we're still going back to the temptation, then I guess if that's what he was explaining to them, that don't fall into this
I don't
idea
want to
that
mix
there's
those.
another way.
Yeah, I
Go
don't
ahead.
want to mix those two up. I don't want to mix those two up.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
straight.
okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah. I'm straight line on the
okay. All
on
right.
the.
So yeah. Then Jesus was just saying, it was simple that there is no other way. There is no other sacrificial lamb. You are that.
But the question posed is, or the hypothetical is that could have been, because the prayer itself, for him to pray the prayer, we know Jesus, we know where he came from, we know that he had been involved in some previous discussions about this moment, We know that he knew and stated that he was born for this moment. And then you get to this moment and you pray this prayer, and you have to ask yourself, or at least I'm asking of the text, well, why would he pray that? And so I could only think that there is the possibility that he prayed it because he saw this other incident. And maybe Jesus saw it in scripture, because he went back and worked the book and said, well, maybe there was this other plan that I'm not privy to. Because I mean, I can even go a little deeper with that, because he even said there's some stuff my father know I don't know. Hello, Anita, come on.
I'm stunned because I was about to say the same thing, and I'm thinking on this as deeply as I can. Um, Jesus knew at the onset his purpose. Isaiah and all the prophets that talked about him, he knew he was the answer to that passage for us to make it through.
Yeah, he was the lamb.
And he was the lamb. He was the sacrificial lamb. And the sin of Abraham's son was not going to get us through. You know, God was testing him for another reason, I believe. But Jesus knew his purpose. He could not escape this one.
Mm, yeah.
And
So he resolved
his
that in the same prayer. The prayer had two pieces to it.
Mhm.
The first thought was, hey, maybe this other thing gonna happen. Then he said, okay. He resolved very quickly.
Yeah. He was the only unblemished lamb.
Correct.
He was the only, so he was the only answer in this process that was taking place.
Correct.
I don't know how Jehovah would have done it any differently. And Jesus came prepared to do that.
He
But
came prepared.
but his humanness allowed him to understand what he was about to go through, the pain. You know, those 39 stripes, they weren't with feathers, you know, and and the piercing in his side.
Yeah, all that
And
was real.
yeah, and humanly, that was torture, that was pain.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
And I don't know. I'm stumped on this one because he knew when he went in what he had to do. He did this freely, but his human side had reservation because he knew what that was going to feel like.
Correct. Correct. Come on, Mark Clark. Thank you, Anita.
Yes, we used to sing to be like Jesus, oh, to be like him, oh, how I want to be like him. Uh, Humble and holy, meek and lowly, oh, how I want to be like him. And we are looking at him this week, his prayers, his attitude, his posture. And, we learned in DayStart a few months ago when we were talking about prayer that Jesus had a custom or a habit of pulling off to himself and praying often. That's what the book says. So who knows what all he prayed about? And like you say, I think he had conversations about this before. And as you brought out with Abraham and Isaac, Jesus also said, with man, things are impossible. But with God, all things are possible.
Yeah,
So
right. That's right now.
he knew that anything could happen. Yeah, we planned, we talked about this.
Yeah.
But
He's
with
praying for the plot twist.
yes, there's a plot twist. You got something, you know, you know, 'cause right now I'm just a man and my role I'm playing. But is it possible?
Yeah.
Because with all things are possible.
Yeah.
So that has been established. Now we see how it played out. We are glad that it wasn't pushed back another time.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
are great.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we didn't have to have another Messiah. But yes, I feel that in his spirit as a man, knowing more than what they knew. And that's why they couldn't pray as earnestly. He knew exactly what he was about to do.
Yeah.
They were vague, so they didn't the urgency, the seriousness, they
Right.
didn't.
That's right. That's right. They didn't comprehend the fullness of what was going down.
No, and a lot of times we don't. We're in situations where God is trying to do something or say something.
And if I could paraphrase it the way he said, talk to the disciples about praying, you know, it's like, look, if you know like I know, if you knew like I know, you'd learn to get on those knees.
You'd be tearing, rolling,
Mm.
whatever extreme prayer ritual you got, you'd be doing that to make it through this.
You know, when 9/11 went down, we had about 5 homes that we put the real estate type signs out in front of the house. Prayer offered here on, I think it was either Wednesday or Thursday night. We took and we handed the Bible to every house on the block with a little invitation card to come, get some prayer. All the houses were filled. Every home was filled with people, filled with neighbors. CBS called and wanted to come out and cover one of the prayer meetings in the homes. And we knew what to expect. That lasted 2 whole weeks. And when the pressure lifted, everybody went back to ignoring God. But man, they came with the tears, they came with the fear. We're human. We're interesting. Human beings. We're interesting. And so my point is, Jesus is saying, you know what? Get ahead of it. Get ahead of it before it hits you. The temptation, get ahead of it. Pray now. Get ahead of it. I think about this country. I've been saying this for some years. I said this way before Donald Trump decided he was going to enter the White House. And you get it more as you travel and kind of learn about things, history of other nations. America being the baby nation, we don't consider that. We've never had this kind of experience. And I've said it for years. We're not invincible. And we just going about, even now, we just going about life. Everybody's laughing and playing on the internet and doing their thing and making up new rules and making right wrong and wrong right and celebrating it and in your face, I dare you to confront me about what is clearly wrong. Meanwhile, you got this fool, and I'll say it just like that. Anybody's offended, just pray for me. That it looks like he might slow walk right back in there. And then America's going to be a different America. It's guaranteed. I would say pray. Pray. So you don't give into temptation. Because you might need to stand in a way that you've never needed to stand before. You might need to. You got a complex situation. You got believers who are buying into the lie. You can just follow the text. This is all, a Bible one-on-one kind of activity. And I'm not going to get into whether or not this is, talking about eschatology in the time. I don't believe that. I think it may be end of a cycle and the beginning of a new one. End of history, portion of history and the beginning of a new one. But anytime you have these cycles, even in this text, if you read it around this, the prophetic word about the dismantling, destruction of Jerusalem, the rise of Nero is prophesied in the text. It doesn't mention them by name, but it tells you it's coming. Some things are coming. And he says you need to be prepared for it because it's going to impact you. Your own mother and father might become your enemy in this process. And we're looking at this right now. We can't even have the conversation I'm having now. If you had this conversation around your Thanksgiving dinner, somebody left salty. And it's amazing that you can sit with people who say, I'm a believer, and will challenge you because you decide to not follow the fool. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now, I just painted that picture because that brings it very close, very real, very right now for us. And I'm just saying, I said, you know what? I'm trying my best to get my own head right on this. I am. I talk it out with my family, talk it out with my wife, and we've discussed what it might be that might be faced should this happen. That ain't gonna be the end of the world. It will just introduce a new world, which is gonna require a different set of spiritual tools. Not that they're new. They may just have been in the toolbox and not used recently. You might have to reach in there and get you some prayer and fasting out. You might need to reach in there and get you some serious discipline out. I would admonish you to know what you know. Know what you know, so that if you enter into temptation, that temptation to abandon the faith that was handed down by your mama and grandmama, to abandon the faith that's been cultivated during this time of our sharing. Now, this is 3 years. This is unusual. This is unplanned. We talked about it in our extended conversation on here that, I would love for, more people to get this and to have this experience and this exchange. But might it be that the Lord is just gathering a group together to say, listen, let me get your head right in preparation for what might be coming. It's not fear, it's awareness and wisdom. It's a sensitivity. It's a knowing that many are the afflictions of the righteous. You don't get the luxury of avoiding any pain, but you are equipped in a way that the world is not, to endure it, to walk through it, to navigate it, to be a light in the midst of it, to have courage and boldness and confidence in the same God that carried you through the times of ease will carry you through the times of trouble. It was a post I was going to repeat. It's a word that it's a truth that I embrace. I think I embody, I hold to it. That for me, God has possession of my whole life. I don't give him the hard part and I take credit for the good part. My whole life. I love the little song. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got my whole world in his hands. So it doesn't matter what's going on around me, and even the internal struggle that I wrestle with as a human being, all of that is in his hands. And I leave it there. I leave it there. Somebody came to visit yesterday. They looked at me, and it's sort of perplexing. I know I didn't been through it, but I try not to live in that. I try to live in the reality that I'm in his hands. Now that means, some of you have been with me walking long enough to have seen me go through some hellish situations. Most of it I don't disclose unless it's absolutely necessary, but whether that's financial, physical, whatever it is, I try to keep all of it in his hand. It's just a whole different kind of being. I call it the knowing, living in the knowing. It's a whole other experience, because you can't get caught up with the machinations and the scrimmages and the moments that happen. You can't get caught up in the people that come and go. I'm still in his hands. So if the fool takes office, I'm just telling y'all right now, and you can receive this however you need to. If the fool takes office, you need to make sure that you pray that you don't enter into temptation.
Yeah.
There's some things that you can do to compromise, and you can convince yourself that it's okay. And it's going to take great wisdom, not the wisdom of this world. You're not going to be able to rely on that. I don't care how much of it you possess. The wisdom of this world will never enable you to navigate this kind of level of craziness. You need the wisdom that's from above. You get that, you know, you got to get on those knees like Jesus did in that garden to get that. You've got to deny some things entry into your thought processes. Deny some things entry into your heart. Solidify some elements of your faith. You can't continue to act as a babe who does not fully know. There's a lot of that happens with believers. They don't want to. My wife preached a message years ago. She said, who was that said they don't want to grow up?
Peter Pan.
Okay, she said, the Peter Pan Christian, I don't want to grow up. I just want to stay right here. You can't do that. At some point in time, you've got to own your faith, and then you got to know what you know. Ain't gonna be no time for rambling around trying to figure out. You need to know firsthand what is true and what is not true, and then have the willingness to stand on what is true. And you see, when you get into a chaotic situation like that, everybody's just running, trying to find safe ground, trying to find solid ground. Everybody's, you know, as I said, you know, we 9/11 hit, we opened those doors, folk come in, they want to know, and they were expressing their fear, very specific fear about that moment. And it might have been a good warning shot for America, but you know, we quick to forget. And they didn't have an answer. So they were willing, listen to me, they were willing to run into a stranger's home. They should not have been a stranger because they're the next door neighbor. They were willing to run into a stranger's home and declare that they are afraid of the moment and don't have an answer. Listen to what I'm saying. So who's going to have that answer? Who's responsible in that moment to be available with what is true? True. What is true? So I'm looking at this prayer. I'm looking at it deeply. I'm glad it's stirred up in me what is stirred up in me this morning. Thank you, Brother Brad, for that question. Tempted to do what? And then Brooks kissed it. Maybe they, you know, the temptation to just keep on sleeping while it's going down. Just go on sleep, nod off, snore, get you some Z's in. The temptation not to take responsibility, not to grow up, not to stand up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm good.
Uh, that evokes a lot. While you were talking, you mentioned something that we haven't, you know, we just hadn't put in this text. You mentioned so many things that we haven't connected with temptation and prayer.
Hmm.
I was thinking of temptation as a method, and you said that it's not new.
Mm-mm.
John said, all that's in the world is the lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life. Jesus had already been tempted with that. He was done with that.
Yeah.
But we haven't necessarily passed those three.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, he was beyond, he was to this point where I don't really want to go through this, but this is not my pride of life. It's not the lust of the flesh. Uh, you know, it was painful, disconnection from God. He was
Confrontation with death.
with death. He had an inclination of something he didn't want to do, but he was going to do it anyway. We're not, we haven't been confronted, and you're talking about the times and the change. We may get a good chance to be confronted with an untenable situation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now.
And
Yes, sir.
they didn't have a clue, as we established. They knew how to pray lightly. He had kept them even in his prayer.
Pretty prayer. Pretty
Yeah,
prayer.
yeah, I kept them while I was here. He was a little concerned that they didn't have a clue. But I'm going to be gone. I need you to watch over these guys because they tender. They hadn't experienced much because they had me with them.
Mm.
So, and I see how the three temptations, the pride of life, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, has already infiltrated and contaminated the group of believers in our religion.
The body of Christ
Already all in there. So
already in there deep.
we're contaminated. So how can we get beyond those three to this next level?
It's scary, man. Well, you know, so here's the thing though. So this same group, 70 years later, right? Is it 70 years later?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're facing all that Jesus said they were going to face. You got Nero lighting Christians in his garden, making them the candle for the night. It's real history now. And they had to respond to that. They had to respond to that. Yeah. Anyway, so it's heavy. It's heavy, and it's concerning. When I looked at the response to the church, the response of the church to this person. I was in Africa. I had to preach in Lagos, big church. And then I brought up over dinner, very mildly, casually, that I would not be touching politics while I was speaking. And I mentioned some people by name. And the fight was fierce. I gotta just say this. The fight was fierce. It was a strong resistance. The pastor whispered to me, said, "Now," or spoke softly. You know, everybody here is not against this person. Speaking of his wife, who grew up in apartheid. Do that math. Do that math. So we need the truth and we need to follow it. We need to I don't think we have that discipline, beautiful people. I don't even understand why I'm pouring out like this morning on this one, but I'm just going to roll and assume that I know. But there's a discipline that's required to have the truth, the clear truth of God's word as a reference to everything life. You cannot be a baby and do this. You cannot be a sometimey, I'm going to just go to church and wing it Christian to be able to survive those kinds of moments and to be of use to the master. You don't know who might run up in your house. This man has declared that he will become a dictator if he gets in. He says this stuff out loud with Christians listening. He says, I will use the military at my disposal to carry out whatever I decide to carry out. Now you're hearing this out loud. And by the way, you can just go ahead and get your history on Adolf Hitler and read it out because he's just followed the playbook. Standing up in front of church with the Bible upside down. All these moves right before us. Meanwhile, we got roller skates and treadmills on church stages. Lately, we're fighting over whether or not we should be honoring Carlton Pearson or damning him. It's incredible the moment that we're living in, y'all. I mean, if you just really need to pay attention on, not in fear, not in fear, because everything that you need to navigate these moments is right there in front of you. People don't want truth. They just tell me a story. Sing me a song. Pacify me. Make me feel good. Somebody needs to have some truth in them. Truth that has been worked out, not just talked about. So there you go. Good morning. Good morning. I recorded that. That's good. We need that.